Welcome to a new edition of If I Ever Live to Be. It's truly the podcast with all the things because some episodes I can't get through without crying. And today I may not get through this episode at all because I'll be laughing and I won't be able to speak because I have Big Rich Brock comedy in the house. Rich, welcome.
Come on, Whitney. What about it this morning? It's good to see you.
I got my shirt on.
Best dressed woman in broadcasting right there. I'm telling you. Hot, best dressed. You cover it all right there wearing that. Green is your color.
Well, thank you. I had to represent. I thought, what better day? And I've been to 2 of your shows now, so I think that constitutes me as an official fan.
You are a follower.
Yes.
And I'm not starting a cult, I promise. It's not that. No.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm leading anyone, but I'm following.
Everybody leaves happy, and, I don't know if the wine has anything to do with it at the winery shows, but church shows, they leave happy too. And yeah. I don't know what they bring in, but
That's true, because both shows I've been at 3 Strands that you have been at. That's where I've come. So shout out to them and Dallas.
I'll be there April 11th back at 3 Strands.
Okay. Very nice. Well, folks, may see 2 individuals there.
Might be 3 in a row, Third time's the charms, all I'm saying, Whitney. That's great. Hey, you get to see 2 local celebrities if you come out.
Yeah. So I never told you this, but you were my first sit-down comedy show.
Nice. What have you been doing all your life?
I don't know. Not living, apparently, because it was
Whitney, you're the 3rd person to tell me that. The other 2 were in their 80s. So,
well,
you made it. You made it a lot earlier than them.
There's so many directions I could go with that, but I won't. Well, it was my birthday, and literally on my birthday, my 37th, the show was Friday, December 13th. And I have a wonderful, amazing women's Bible study group, and they were like, "What are you doing for your birthday?" And I was like, I don't know. And so they put this together. It was so much fun. Like, everyone loves to laugh, right? So
yes, we need to.
I mean, I've watched comedy before, but that was my first go-to show.
Well, so I'm honored. I could go 100 directions there, but I won't. I'm honored, and I enjoy, one, bringing people together, and bringing groups out. I do. Gosh, this week, at this taping, I'll have done 300 headlining shows in 3 years. So it's just took off. I have a lot of fun with it. But the best part is, like, when I met you and your friends, now some of them my friends or acquaintances, people came up and they were laughing and they were telling me things about their dad or their family or their kids. They relate to something that I talk about, and it stirs up a great memory, great emotions and feelings from whether it's growing up in the 1900s, which you barely did, but you did a little bit, or things with your folks. And that's what I know. It's a good night. Yes, when people laugh, but when people connect, that's what I'm really trying to do in the hour that I'm with folks, is to get them connected and to enjoy an experience.
Well, that's fantastic. Congratulations on 300. That's amazing.
I'm excited about it. Gosh, my previous life as a pastor, I figured out, I don't know if I have a numbers issue because I keep up with numbers all the time. And, I preached for 26 years, over 4,000 sermons, probably almost 10 years on TV. So when I went into comedy, I thought, wonder how this is going to play out. And I just basically went to a couple open mics, Whitney, Didn't like them because I was the oldest person there. I'm clean. There are 26 comics that get 4 minutes. It takes forever. They're an hour away from Cartersville, where I'm living, because you either go to Atlanta or Chattanooga. And I'm like, man, I'm too old for this. I got to figure out. And somebody actually this morning had reached out to me that wanted to do comedy and said, how did you start? What do you suggest? And I showed up at networking events and would do 30 seconds of comedy, or I would get 2 or 3 friends together, or walk into my favorite watering hole and do 5 minutes. And they didn't know it, but that's what I was doing. I was doing open mic. I called my insurance agent and say, hey, what are you doing? He goes, I'm just sitting around a minute. I said, perfect. And I'll run through material. I hit people that I know and I think they got a good sense of humor, and I run things by them instead of staying up till midnight doing open mic and hearing filth all night. So anyway, that's a thought.
No, I think that it's how you do your show and how you market is really genius, because even the second show that I went to, like at the end, you were closing and you gave me the shout out, which for the podcast, like you allowed me to tell the whole audience about my podcast. I was totally caught off guard, but I was like, the clue there is that you pay attention to your audience. And like Buffy Payne and Matt Payne came to the second show, and I think you just picked up a copy of her new book. Yeah. Like, you support those who support you, and that's one of the best ways to build not only a following and an audience, but like loyal customers, if we can call them that.
Well, Whitney, in that I basically took the principles I learned as a church planner and use those to build a comedy empire. No, and build.
It's getting there.
Yeah, and people ask, like, things I do different than a lot of comedy shows you go to is most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, pre-show, I'm out there in the crowd talking to people. Hey, good to see you. A lot of times I'm the one taking the tickets, making sure they pay, now collecting the money, selling merch, talking, because just like the preacher at the door, at the end of service, I used to get tickled in the churches I was involved in. And I worked in some mega churches where, the pastor didn't need to be disturbed. He's like, I can't be around people. I'm speaking on God's behalf. And I get some of that, because there's always that 2 or 3 people that'll suck the life out of you, no matter what you do in life, and wear you out. But I've just learned, and my job as a assistant to those guys was to go out and connect, talk, interact with people. How's your mama and them? Those kind of moments. So I've learned in comedy shows, I've done shows with 20 people. I've done shows so far, the biggest probably 300, 400. I had one that was a little larger than that, but all of those I go out, hey, good to meet you. How are you? Thanks for coming out. How did you hear about the show? How'd you find the venue? I always try, I don't remember every time, but like if I'm at Big Door or Three Strands or Paris Mountain or Seven Hills Brewery, I'll say at the beginning, how many people, this is your first time to this place? Would you clap your hands? There's always new people. And that lets the owner know I'm bringing in money to them. And then I'll say, oh, how many first time at a Big Rich show? And there's always some new people. And then I'm like, my God, I've done 300 of these. Where you been, Whitney? And do that kind of stuff. But I just use what I learned and what I did as a minister and a pastor and church planner to build this. That's pretty much the same principles. It's kind of who I am.
Well, and I have a feeling we get the same Rich Brock, whether it's 20 people or 200 people.
Yeah, pretty much so. And I try to give, about 2 weeks ago, I do a show at a winery in Rockmart. Paris Mountain. Rockmart's a great town. They're not really known as the wine capital. You know, they're not Napa Valley or anything, but it's a great winery. They grow their own grapes. It's out in the middle. You get out there and you think, I've escaped. You know, this is just a beautiful, relaxing place, but they're new. Word's got to get out. They got to get established. So it's normally my smallest show. And, you know, the other night I was there and we had 15 people. And I felt my heart just being reminded, you know, 3.5 years ago, you didn't know 15 people that would come out and hear you. A lot of these open mics that you go to are the same 12 comics talking to each other and maybe 2 or 3, you know, listeners. So, you know, I thought, man, 15 people paid hard-earned money, came out on a Friday night, and I get there and 10 of them had never been to the venue and 9 of them had never been to a show. And we got done and somebody that'd seen me, they said they'd been to 12 shows. And I finished and they're like, do this one. They're wanting me to do bits or calling them out. Yeah. And I'm like, I've just went an hour and 15 minutes, you know? And I said, these people are done. And some guy says, no, let's hear it, you know? So I do another 15 minutes or so. So one of the things that's cool is I'm seeing folks that are brand new, but then I've got folks that have been to 5, 10, 20. There's a few people, and they're not stalkers that I can tell. They've been to 30, 40 shows because they like the feeling. I mix it up some, but the biggest thing I get from those loyal folks is we want to say we knew you when and watch it happen because they're like, you're going to make it. Something's going to happen where you're going to hit that level and we can say, man, we saw him at a coffee shop with 30 people. We saw him at the winery with 20 or 70 or whatever. So it's cool. And Whitney, you know, like you wearing the shirt today, that I grin and I cut up with you. And yes, thank you. Enjoy life, friends. But when I went into a show near my hometown that I do monthly, and I walked in one night and there were 40 people that bought tickets. 20 of them had on merch that they had bought and came out. And I went in the back and I teared up because I'm like, because you go to the big shows, Dusty Slay, those, you know, guys that I respect, appreciate, Nate Bargatze, you see people wearing their merch, you see people coming out, you know, and I'm like, it's small time, but it's working. And it just blessed me. And I was like, that's pretty cool. So
yeah, that is
representing.
Well, I'd love for you to tell the story of how you got into this, because you alluded to it a little bit, but you were a pastor for over 20 years prior. So yes. How do you go from pastor to comedian?
Okay, well, I laugh when you talk to comedians. How long you been a comedian? All my life. Well, I'm an only child, number one, and I'm the youngest on my dad's side of the family. So my cousins were my closest thing as siblings, and they all call me the prince. You know, my grandmother, I was probably 10 years younger. Well, maybe not 10 if they're listening, but close. So I got treated like royalty, and they were all aged together. So they just got, spanked, whipped, punished, and here I come along. So,
that explains so much in my own story.
I'm telling you, it does. And I do I can do 30 minutes on being an only child.
I bet.
And it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite bits that I do. And especially when there's people there that are only children, and it's so relatable and people understand us better. But I've always wanted to do comedy. When I was a teenager, I was wittiest in my class my senior year. Gordon Lee High School, Chickamauga, Georgia, class of 86, baby. And that's the 1900s, not the 18. And so, I've always been, that was my thing. I learned my poor father, well, my father, he's not poor. He's in heaven now, but I remember him in 8th grade. When I was in 8th grade, Whitney, he looked at me and said, "What happened? You had all A's. You were a great student. 7th grade, I got the Student of the Year award for Chickamauga Elementary." How do you remember that, Big Rich? Well, it only happened once, so that's how I remember. But I hit 8th grade and the hormones kicked in and the girls, and I realized they liked comedy. And if I made girls laugh, and I went to a school where we didn't have a middle school. The 8th graders got stuck in the high school back then. And if you made people laugh, you didn't get punched, you didn't get bullied as much, or they were afraid to mess with you, because I just had that gift of coming up with things off the top of my head. So anyway, that's what I wanted to do. And of course, I never pursued it. And at 21, I was born again, became a Christian. By 22, and I'm like, I think I'm supposed to be in the ministry. And at 22, I got hired as a youth pastor at the church that I had been at. I'd only been saved, a believer, for maybe a year, but I was just whatever I'm into, I'm just passionate about it. They hired me, youth group grew. Then I got involved in a big church in Chattanooga, Tennessee, that was half black, half white, back in the 90s, which is unusual back then. Spirit-filled type church, interdenom. I came out of the Baptist background. Then I get into this type church. And that church was, 300 or 400 people, grew to 3,000 in about 3.5 years.
Wow.
And I was in the middle of all of it. So I say all that because I preached 4,000 sermons. I planted 2 churches. I've worked in 2 mega churches. One for the folks that have the jets and the big, all the bells and whistles. So I've saw a lot of things, but comedy, I was doing comedy in my sermons. I probably focused more on making people laugh a lot of times, but I learned that you get people laughing and then you hit them with some truth, or you hit them with something that's serious. People need to laugh. Laughter's like a medicine. So anyway, that was my world, and that I never thought about doing stand-up. And for me, Whitney, COVID, the first round, I'm sitting around, I'm divorced. I'm living alone. My kids are, with me, joint custody back and forth. But, I had a lot of free time. And I started thinking about, what would I like to do? What would I regret not ever trying? And for me, it sounds silly, but it was to do an open mic. I never had done one. And I thought, I need to go do one. So I started studying comedy during COVID. I would, if it was free and online, I read it, I studied it. People go to these comedy schools and this and that. And I get it. But that's more to get stage time and to get comfortable. I've been in front of people since I was 21. I've taught for a living for 40, I start to say 40, but I'm not that old. 35 years I've spoke for a living. So I'm like, I just studied comedy and put together my stories and put together things that I thought were funny and about my life and growing up. And then I booked an open mic, and then I didn't show up because it made me a nervous wreck. And I was like, I ain't doing it. So I went to bed that night and I couldn't sleep. And I'm like, I got to go try it. So the next month they had another one at the Comedy Catch in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I walk in, and I'm the oldest one. They put me on the list. There was like 20 of us. I'm the only clean one that night, which isn't unusual. And I looked around and there's like 20 comics all in the back with their little notes, just reading or looking on their phone. And there's one table of 8 women, 2 guys, a couple, and another couple. That's it. That table of 8 women were out for, divorced ladies out night. First, I get 4 minutes. The first 2 minutes, I'm talking about being divorced. And and their ex-wife jokes. They hate them. I mean, and I wouldn't let up. I just kept doing them. The 2 guys are like, "Oh gosh, that's funny," and it was brutal. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, what this is nuts." But when I handed the mic over, I knew that and I joke around, and I won't say it on the podcast. You got to come to the show, but I knew that I could do it. And I wanted to do it again. And I went to another. I went to one more. And after 4, I said, I'm turning pro. And I put a show together. And much like you said, and I know I'm talking way too much, and let me finish with this part. Much like you said with business, or I went to in Cartersville, it's closed now, but there was a little wine bar that my ex-wife and I would go to on occasion, and I spent money there. And I went in and I said, "Hey, y'all ever done comedy?" And they're like, "No, we do music, but never have. Have you ever thought about it?" "Well, sure, we'd think about it. You know anybody?" I said, "You're looking at him." And they're like, "For real?" And I was like, "Yeah, and of course I could do something." So I started in and did 4 minutes to the people there, and I just walked around talking to everybody. And people had a good little time with it. And he's like, "Okay." I said, "What's your slowest night?" And for them, it was Wednesday. I said, "Okay, how about I come in?" Y'all, he goes, "We even close at 6 because it's so dead. We stay open to 9. Let me do a show at 7 o'clock. I'll bring in a couple of other comics that I've met at open mics. And I think they're funny. And, we'll do it." And he's like, "Sure." I said, "What will you pay me?" He said, "Nothing." And I'm like, "How about if I sell tickets?" "Whatever." And I said, "Okay." And I'll promote drinks. So that's been my principle. I go into these places, I sell tickets, I get the ticket money, run my business, pay the comics, and then I promote food and drinks all night. Well, that first show, 47 people came out. I turned in every favor I had, in Cartersville. And I put it on Facebook. And the guy who's a friend at Big Door Vineyards in White called me. "When did you start doing comedy?" I said, "Last night." He's like, "Well, come over here and let's do it next Thursday. You free?" So let me check my schedule. I'm so busy. Did that one. I've done 28 shows at Big Door Vineyard since that night.
Wow.
Then I booked 3 strands. Then I booked, somebody asked me to do a birthday party. Somebody asked me to do a assisted living center. Things just started happening. And to this point, it just kind of evolved. But one thing that was really cool, a guy that is named Stephen Broom out of Carrollton, Georgia, he runs a production company. Stephen and I went to grade school together. Whitney, I hadn't seen him in 30 years. He and his wife showed up at my first show. He saw it on Facebook. I was going to do comedy. He's like, "Let's go check this out." He was pretty funny in school. I finished and he looked at me and he said, "When you're ready, I'll film you free of charge. My gift to you to help you." And I didn't know what that meant. And I started looking at what he did, and that was like a 10 grand thing that he's willing to do. So I started preparing, and I said, "Give me 3 months." And 3 months later, if you go to my YouTube, it's mainly footage from that when I started, because I went and rented the Ringgold Depot, and 200 people came out, and I did a night where I did an I did every piece of material I had at the time, and he filmed it. And I started putting that out. And I still don't, right now, a lot of it's still word of mouth. I mean, the Dry Bar special came to me. That was a big plus.
Yeah.
But I just kind of got started because I decided I'm going to do it. You know, I'm going to do it. And I went for it. And I go for it every day. And I do it full time now for about a year and a half. And I changed my life a little bit, you know, what I spend, where I live to make this. I got a 5-year plan. This is what I want to get accomplished in 5 years. And right now I'm starting year 3. So I'm ahead of schedule. So hallelujah to that.
That's fantastic.
I need a beer. No, I'm teasing. I got some water.
Recounting that story.
It's early. It's early, people.
Okay, I have a couple more questions for you. So what would you say to someone who is like, I'm too old for this, don't have the resources, don't know what I'm doing, not going to work, tried it before, failed? Like, what would you tell those people?
Well, the advice I got from somebody who was older than me, and they started at 40. I was 53 when I started. They said, you're never too old. You've got life experiences. You find your audience. You know, not everybody. I don't know if I've done comedy clubs, but I don't know if I'm a comedy club guy. But I've drawn an audience, and you find I've got somebody I've, quote, helped along the path that their thing is like women's church groups. She's does well at that and gets bookings there. You've got to think broader than Punchline, Laughing Skull, Comedy Catch, Helium. Think beyond that. Where can I do my thing? Then you've got to, what I did, I invested in myself. I didn't have the money to start. I had a second car that was kind of a fun ride that I had, a little convertible car. And I thought, I'm selling it. It's paid for, sold it. My ex-wife, that didn't what caused the divorce, but, you know, I said, I'm selling this car that, you know, and I brought it in. It was paid for when we got married. And she's like, why? And I said, I want to do comedy and I need a PA system. I had a plan. I want to do wineries, breweries, places that don't have comedy. See, I wasn't looking to go to the comedy club. I was taking comedy, much like in church. You're trying to build a church. You don't build it like CVS and Walgreens or Home Depot and Lowe's beside another one. You go to places where people need Christ, where they need a church. You know, I said, I don't want to go build comedy at a comedy club. If I end up there, great. I went to places that had never done comedy. And that's how I started. And I invested in myself. That t-shirt you're wearing, that one, not necessarily, but the blue ones, I bought 100 with that car money. I bought the PA system you see at my shows with that car money and the laptop I'm on right now. And I started. And I just got after it. And fortunately for me, and I think when you know, it's not that it's easy, but when you know you're in it and this is what you're supposed to be doing, God opens doors and you just have to keep walking. The 300 shows that I've booked so far, all of those have come to me, meaning they found me. Now, I know it won't always be that way. And I remind myself because I'm off Saturday night and I need to be working. So I got to promote better. But it's cool that all of those have come to me where people have said, hey, we saw you on Facebook, or our friend told us about you, or we came to a show. We'd love to have you. Or our friend that owns this brewery said you'd be great for us. And that's how you build it. So you got to, and the other thing, if you're starting something, no matter if it's comedy, music, a career, business, you got to start here and work your way up. And the way you go up, me being a pastor for 28 years and a TV preacher, it made some other comics kind of mad. I mean, when I started, they're like, who's this guy? And they'll tell me now that we know each other, like, who's this guy? Everybody thinks they're a comic. He's putting flyers out and posters, and now they work for me. No, I was like, you know, they're like, when you started, we thought, who's this old guy and what's he trying to do? But then they see the brand and they come out and it makes sense. So I just encourage them, you got to go for it. But at the same time, you've got to spend the time. I spent that year and a half of COVID preparing. The show you saw, a lot of that I put together over 28 years of ministry and living and 50 years of life, and then just trying to figure out. And what I do tonight at a show might be similar to what I did when I started, but it's a whole lot better. You watch me on Dry Bar, you got to remember, I was not the youngest Dry Bar. I was the newest Dry Bar person, comedian they had hired out of 12 seasons. They didn't know I'd only been doing comedy 9 months until I got out there because of all the years of preaching. So some of the things when you're on your journey, you'll get to jump some levels, you know. Same thing in podcasting and your background. You know, there's just things you were comfortable doing and it's easier. But I just encourage people to go for it and find people that are doing what you love and ask them. That's what's great about this podcast. You can learn things about people and about things you might be interested in. You know, we mentioned our mutual friend in her book. I have no problem paying $20 to hear what somebody took their whole life to figure out.
Yeah.
I can get that for $20. Hey, right. I'm in. You know, you come to my show, I'm going to take you on a journey from when I was a kid till I'm a grown man at 50, however, 6, 7 years old that I am. And you're getting it for $20. And I'm going to give you a history lesson, a comedy show. You'll understand your parents better, you know, your kids, whatever. So anyway.
Well, you are still preaching, Mr. Rich Brock. That was so good. Well, and what I love about that too is I heard, you know, define what success is to you. Don't go out there and compare what you want to do or where you're at to everyone else.
And it's, you know, I feel like, Whitney, you know, for Christian people that are listening, we all, you know, come to Christ. For me, there was a phrase that I heard in my heart, and it was, "Are you happy?" I was 21 years old. I wasn't an alcoholic. And you say, "Oh, how do you know?" Well, I didn't drink for 28 years after the fact, but it's to me. But I love to party. I love being hard to imagine. I love being in the middle of everything. And it was always a bottle, a beer, a bottle, you know, all that stuff. And I got to a place where, I flunked out of college. Then I went to another college and got asked to leave there because and working a dead end job at 20. I'm working a job and I'm making decent money for back then, but I hated it. And I remember my boss, my manager saying, "Do you like this job?" And I said, "It's okay." "Why?" "Well, you're going to do it for the next 35 years if you don't get your head out of your know what and get a plan and figure out what your purpose is." And this guy was, the manager of a lab in a carpet mill. I worked in a lab in there. And I'm like, God, dude, 35 years, man, that's a long, ugh. But at 21, I'm riding in the back of a car with two other guys. I'd had a DUI at 21. And I remember my poor mother, "I can't believe you did that." And I'm like, and this was I don't make light of it. It was a different time. Mothers Against Drunk Driving came out, which was a great thing to help with this, I believe. Like back, I don't know the date, but that had just started. They started cracking down on that a lot more in the 80s. And I remember getting a DUI and telling my friends, well, I've probably driven drunk 1,000 times. So I only got caught once, was my mentality. And it didn't change my behavior. It scared me, but it cost me a lot of money, but it didn't change my heart. And maybe 2 or 3 months later, I just heard within me, are you happy? And I was like, no. And those guys were like, what? I said, one of y'all asked me if I was happy. And they're like, we could care less if you're happy. And these are my best friends. I said, we're not happy. Why do we care if you are? And I just said, hey, y'all got to take me home. And they're like, man, we're going to Chattanooga. We ain't going back to Chickamauga. So I just got out of the car and I walked home.
Wow.
And I came in at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, and my dad was like, what's wrong? Is somebody hurt? Why are you home? And I was like, I've had an encounter with God. And my dad's like, hey, don't be teasing about that. Don't be joking around about God. You know, I said, I'm not. I just don't know what happened. And the next day I went to church with my parents. And within 6 months, I was a youth pastor. I mean, 6 to 8. So my point, are you happy, is what got my attention. So success is different for everybody. You know, I joke around in comedy. I'd like to make a nice living and not be famous. That would be all. That would be awesome. You know, it's kind of hard to do that, but you know, I see these people and I think, God, boy, that would be a pain. I like me time. I love being with people, but I'm just as content here at the house, just doing my thing. So I'm thankful, and I just encourage people to be thankful where you are. Find things that you can rejoice in. Rehearse your victories. All of us, I've overcome some tough things the last 10 years. Divorce. I changed careers. The only career I ever knew. My mother passed from an incurable disease. My sweet dad committed suicide after 60 years of marriage to my mother. I went through another divorce, and people are like, how do you have this joy? Because none of that is who I am. It's my relationship with Christ. It's what he's put in me. And you just learn to overcome things. And no matter what you're doing, business, my comedy is my business, but at the same time, it's something I love doing. That's why I'm thankful that I do something I love. Even more than being a pastor, I feel like this was the niche and this is the place. And the church I attend, the first day I walked in there, Whitney, the pastor knew me from comedy. We didn't know each other. And Easter Sunday, you know, you got to go Easter Sunday. I mean, I thought, I guess I better find a church to go to. I mean, good Lord, it's a Super Bowl for Jesus. I need to go, you know, Easter. And I went in and I hit the door, and I heard in my heart that same voice I heard that said, are you happy? Said, welcome home. And I thought, oh God, I don't want a home. I like not going to church. I always say time served. I mean, my God, I went every time the door's open for 30 years. I got time served. And I was like, okay, I'll start going. And on Easter Sunday, I mean, you know, 2 services, it's busy, it's crowded. He says, before we dismiss, I just got to do something, and forgive me. I don't mean to embarrass anybody. I don't mean to take time, but Big Rich. I'm like, oh God, you know, Lord, take us now. Rapture us out of here. You know, what's this going to be? And he says, I just want to encourage you that what you're doing right now, you're exactly where you're supposed to be in comedy, and you're reaching more people and bringing hope to more people in what you're doing, and you will. He said it. He goes, you'll reach more people what you're doing now than you ever did in 25 years plus of ministry.
Mhm.
And I left there and I thought, gosh, man, I should just stay home. No, I was like, wow. But I think you got to have those kind of moments, Whitney, because there's days that are tough.
Yeah.
Or when you show up at a show, I did a show with this guy who's been doing comedy for 30 years. And I don't do many where I'm the opener, but not because I'm not willing to, but I got a lot to say, as you can tell. And he's like, would you open for me? And we drove to this place in Alabama. God bless him.
Was that not your first red flag?
Now, for all my Alabama people, we love you. Now,
We do.
Some of my favorite married couples are cousins over there. No, I'm teasing. We went to this place, and it was near Coleman, if you know Coleman. I go to exotic places, people. I go to Rockmart, Dallas, Georgia, Adairsville, near Coleman. Hey, I am going to Destin Memorial Day weekend doing 3 shows at a theater. So if you're in Destin, come down there. But, I go to these glamorous places all the time. Everybody thinks I'm out sipping wine and just living the life. But I go to some holes, I'm telling you. So I go with this guy on Good Friday a couple of years back. And we show up, and it's this metal building in a trailer park way off the road. And the first 3 people I meet are all on meth. How do you know? Because I've been around, I've seen it, and they're methed out. We're trying to find the comedy show, and we find out it's in this metal building. And it says wrestling, weddings, and other events. That was the name on the building.
Wrestling, weddings, and other events.
And I just prayed we were other events because I didn't want to get married and I didn't want to wrestle.
I don't know. That's another red flag. You've got.
Yeah, and if you wrestle and lose, you had to get married. No, I'm teasing. I don't know what it was, but this guy booked. He paid me $100 to ride over there with him, and I wanted to spend time with him. And we had fun. We started off, and he said it's only an hour from the house. It was 3 hours and 30 minutes from. He forgot about the time change, and then he forgot I lived outside of Cartersville, and I don't know what he thought, but anyway, on Good Friday, I got to get to the Lord's house the next, or it was Good Saturday, forgive me, on Saturday. I was like, man, I got church tomorrow. I'm tired. I'm like, oh, this is insane. We get there, though, there's nobody there. They sold no tickets. I've never had that happen. And I looked at him. I was like, he goes, oh, I've had this happen a lot. He goes, and I won't say his name. He wouldn't care though, but he goes, I've been at this 20 years. I've probably done a dozen of these where nobody showed up. You haven't? I said, no, because I mark it, and I get out there and I work at it. And he's like, well, we'll just hang around a few and then we'll leave. Well, Whitney, the 5 people that were working the event all lived around that trailer park area. We waited 45 minutes, and then he said, well, and then the woman said, yep, I guess we ought to start the show. And he wasn't going to do a show. He was going to get the car and go home. And I said, okay. And he looked at me, he says, we're doing a show? I said, they paid us, right? He goes, yeah. And I said, there's 5 of them. Let's go for it. And we did the comedy in a wrestling ring because it was the wrestling venue. They took the ropes down, but it was like a big trampoline. And it was like 12 feet up. And those 5 people, I said, you want to just sit here and do it? And she's like, oh no, let's do it up in the ring. So I'm up there on Good Saturday, left my career as a pastor, my home inspection business. I'm pursuing comedy full time. I got paid $100 and I bought the gas. So I probably made $60. I look out, there's 5 people that I've been talking to for an hour and I know all about them. And I came out and then I just took off and I just started doing, and I had 30 minutes with there. And he goes, just do like 10, we'll get out of here. I gave him the full 30. And during it, the guy, one of the 5, the guy that hired us was like, hey, you used to be a preacher, aren't you? I said, yeah. He goes, well, let the Lord lead you. He's like, at the wrestling ring. He goes, it's Good Friday, Saturday, and tomorrow's Easter. Just, if you want to do whatever you want to do. And I've never, like, quote, preached at a comedy show. And I'm up there with those 5 people, and I do my comedy, and I'm including them, and they're laughing. And, we are in Alabama. One guy laughed so hard, he showed all 4 teeth. I mean, we had a time. And then I just encouraged them, and I ministered to them a little bit. And then they start crying, and one guy is praising the Lord and worshiping, and another lady's over there and asked me to pray for her. And I'm like, oh my Lord. So I do all that, Whitney, and then I'm done. I took like 40 minutes. And then the guy that brought me, who knew nothing about anything about spiritual stuff, he just looked, and I handed the mic and I said, now follow that. And he did like 9 minutes and was waiting in the car. They were, talking, huddled up. But my point, that started off a horrible night. Horrible. Yeah. And I ended up probably clearing $30. I mean, it was not just, I thought, what a huge waste of time. And in the middle of it, God showed up. Told me to encourage people, have fun. If I'd have went in there with a bad attitude, I'd have missed out on something that I've actually talked about in probably 30 shows and interviews since, because I was at the right place. Well, I was at the wrong place at the right time, so go figure.
Oh, that's so good. So if others listening, they want to come to a show, they want to hire you because you do corporate events, all the good things, where do they go to connect with you and learn more?
Website is Big Rich Brock, which is just all one word, Big Rich Brock, see it there on the screen, .com. Website, and if you will, follow me. So I'm an old man and I don't understand the importance of all this. And they're teaching me in the comedy clubs. Follow me on, I'm a TikToker, which made my kids nervous. I said, boys, I'm a TikToker now. And my middle son's like, oh God, he goes, what's this going to be? And so you can TikTok before the Chinese take over. You can Instagram, Face World, as my mama called it, YouTube, all of that. Follow it, like it, share it. Shows, if you're in the area, Northwest Georgia, I'm there all the time. I'll be in Cartersville on April 5th at the Legion Theater, which is a great little 75-seat theater show, 1940s type theater. I bring in some of the best comics from Atlanta to Nashville. On the 5th, I've got a guy coming in from Nashville to work with me. I'll be at Big Door Vineyards on April 10th, which is a Thursday night, or as we like to call Friday Eve. You can come out and be a part of that. Again, I bring an Atlanta comic. I'll be at Three Strands. My Nashville buddy is coming back through town and doing that one with me on Friday, April 11th. I'll be at Paris Mountain in Rockmart on Friday, May 2nd. And then I'll be in Destin for Memorial Day weekend. So if you're down there or have friends in Destin, send them my way to the Emerald Coast Theater. But yeah, I do a lot of corporate gigs. I've done things for the Georgia Automotive Dealers Association down in as far Georgia as you can get, down in the islands down there, and had a great time. I do churches. I've got a couple of churches that I do. I can do a church service, but what I really like doing is coming in and doing something for your leaders, your volunteers, where we do a comedy night, and I'll book that and then stay and do a church service the next morning, or a comedy show Sunday night. Activation Church in Dallas has had me a couple of times and do comedy shows where people are more comfortable. They might not say, hey, I don't go to church. I'll go hear this guy do comedy. I'll be just a little bit of everywhere. So you can find me. I do coffee shops, wineries, breweries, most of the things I do, a few comedy clubs, but reach out. We'll see what we can do. It's a lot of fun. I did in Cartersville, the Dancing with the Stars. One of the couples hired me to do a fundraiser for them, and that couple raised the most money out of any of the contestants. They raised 80 grand. Wow. Not all on my night, but I helped, and we had fun. I did an hour set. They did dinner and a show and had $100 ticket, and I think they sold like 100 of them, and we just had a big time. So, and you'll find me occasionally. I'll do shows in Ackworth at the VFW, Dallas, Seven Hills Brewery, just a lot of different places. I'm willing to listen to anybody that's like, hey, would you? Real quick, I did about a year ago. I did my first show in an assisted living center. They don't call it old folks homes anymore. And I got booked, and I thought, man, this is going to be and it was 55 and older. And I was 56, and I was the only person close to 55. Everybody else is 78, 100. They were up there. We had the best time. They booked me to do every assisted living center they had in the area. I did 6 nursing home shows 6 days in a row.
Wow.
And all of them were like at 2:00 or 3, but right, before dinner. And it was awesome because I beat Atlanta traffic, and I'm out, and then they had me back to do their Valentine's banquet. And they had 200 folks dressed to the nines, Valentine's. Oh, wow. I did an assisted living show in Virginia for New Year's Eve, and it was at 7:00. And we were done at 8:30, and I was like, this is awesome. You are my people. I didn't have to stay up till midnight. We dropped whatever they dropped at 8:30, and it was done. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. So yeah, you can find me, Dry Bar Special. Check it out. It's on YouTube for free. But come out to a show, and you'll meet people. You'll bring your friends. You'll meet new friends. Bring your old friends, people you work with. You can bring your mother, and it won't embarrass you a whole lot. You can bring, if you bring your kids, they're not going to understand nothing, but they won't be scared. I'm not going to say anything they'll just sit there going, who's this old guy? Whitney, I like when people, I'll have people from 25 to 85 usually at my shows. And the 25-year-olds will come up and go, man, my dad, I understand him better now, and the stuff he talks about. And and like I said, I had a lady real quick, my 6th grade teacher came to my show.
Oh, how about it?
And she's been to, her and her amazing husband have been to probably 10, but she came out to the first show I ever did, and she brought my 6th grade picture, had it blown up, had me sign it to her, my #1 fan. And and she's just an amazing lady, lives over in the Ackworth area now. But, you know, she was my 6th grade teacher, and I'm 57. So I'm not going to say how old she is, but, you know, she wasn't Laura Ingalls Wilder. I mean, she wasn't a teenager when she was teaching. So she called me one night or messaged me and says, hey, we're coming to your show and we're bringing my mother. And I'm like, I mean, my God, like in an urn or what? I mean, what's her mama coming in? Her mother was 97.
Wow.
Had never been to a comedy show. So, and I asked her, did you have fun? She goes, I got out of the house. And she goes, but I did have fun. The other night, I had a lady who was in her 80s that her daughter and her spouse come to a lot of shows, and they brought her, and she has been battling, you know, dementia and some health issues, but she was having a good day. It's like, man, we just don't know what I said, bring her. I said, I'll seat you somewhere in case you need to, you know, I'll take care of you. Just come out. They came, brought her. She had the best time. She had me pose with her for pictures to send her sister. I said, your younger sister, right? And she's like, how did you know? I was like, well, you're 80 something years old. I'm guessing it's your, you know, younger sister. So, you know, I just encourage people to come out, man. We have fun. We have a good time. And comedy's an art form. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I think if you come out, you'll hear something you enjoy, you'll relate to, and it's a feel-good night. I'm not vulgar, but I'm not, you know, I tease, you know, like you asked me one time, and people say, you know, so I'm like the Golden Girls. If you like the Golden Girls, I'm like, I might talk about sex for 30 minutes, but you won't know it unless you've had it before. I mean, I keep things very, very, you know, nice and calm. So that's a good way to end right there. I knew you'd enjoy that. Your green shirt and your red face. That's my work here's done. My work here's done.
Well, I will put a bow on it. I will echo, because your shirt says enjoy life. If you're watching and can see it on the screen. And if you're asking me, I'd say one way to do that is go see a Big Rich Brock show. So thanks for coming on and sharing your time.
Thanks for having me. I love what you do. I'm a fan. I watch, and I don't go on something that I don't believe in. So I believe in what you're doing, and thank you. I appreciate it, and I wish you all the best. And bring those crazy friends of yours, and let's have fun soon.
Come on, somebody.
You know it. Have a great day. And thanks, everybody, for listening.